Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of You Get What You Get. I'm Rickey Hampton with my great friends, Tree McDougal and Tim Turner. Come to you on a Tuesday evening. Hope everybody's week is going good as we spring into June.
It's still
My
early.
goodness, Tree.
It's still early for the week, but yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, I'm talking about being into June, though. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. June it
We,
is.
we, we did not have a spring in Detroit. We just went from winter to summer.
Okay, we went from winter to hot. It's
Yeah.
hot as Hades.
They say they got like 11 million people on the desert Southwest that are under extreme heat warnings already, and it is just the first week of June. They say they normally don't get temps until August, and it's already brush fire season, and it's not supposed to start for a couple of more weeks out there. So, no such thing as global warming, people. It's all a fallacy.
Yeah, right.
Hey
And
Tim,
also-
how's the water in Atlanta?
Oh, you think I'm kidding? There was a main water break downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still no water there. There have been 2 other water main breaks in the city.
Today?
They showed this pipe that pulled out of the ground, 80-year-old cast iron pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Infrastructure of Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's crumbling. Well, the pipes are.
Yeah. You probably say that in a lot of big cities, man.
Yeah,
People
it's
have
not the
overlooked
first time.
infrastructure
Not the
for a
first
while.
city, won't be the last, probably.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta have that foundation. You gotta have it. If you
But
want
you
to
do.
be
They showed,
successful.
they don't. Today was a photo op thing where you see the mayor going around with these pallets of water going to these businesses and homes and stuff. Giving people water because folks have not been some parts of Atlanta have been without water since last Friday afternoon.
And I think I saw one business was shut down indefinitely, probably more than one business.
Oh, there are a lot of them. So yeah, so there was another main break over there at Martin Luther King Drive near the Fulton County Airport, not to be confused with Hartsfield Jackson, the world's busiest and most efficient airport.
That's where my people live.
That's a different one. And there was another one in the county where they showed this water main. It split and water was spilling from both sides. So there's low pressure or no pressure water in places. So we'll be dealing with, against folks inside the city. We're dealing with that. We don't play that out here in the burbs.
I need you to take care of my sisters. That's their neighborhood.
Oh, okay. We have to take care of them.
You might need to take them some water.
Yeah, a pallet or 2 of water would help.
Yes.
And what else would help? There's some people who get water and don't appreciate it. But what is it? Flint? Is that what's going on, Rick?
Yeah, that was a few years ago when Flint had the water issues.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was still going on.
Of course, and they're right here in the Great Lakes state, and they couldn't get good, clean water. They finally got that restored. You were talking about pipes, and all those pipes were just rotted out, man. And lead was getting into the water, and a lot of those kids. It's funny you mentioned Flint. A lot of those kids from that time, I think that was 6-7 years ago, are now having teeth problems. Yeah, dental problems, and they trace it back to the contaminated water that they were drinking. Not good
at all.
No, not good at all, man.
Now, you speaking of lead and speaking of pipes, and you think about somebody getting a beat down with a lead pipe, and on Sunday we saw somebody look like it was close to getting hit with a lead pipe, Caitlin Clark, when they were playing her basketball game.
Close to getting hit? I think she was kind of knocked over.
It was kind of like Chicago, one of the players in Chicago, Miss Kennedy Carter, I think that's her name, took a hit to her. It was kind of foul. And, I think we're going to have in a few minutes, Kim Davis is going to be with us. She just chimed in. She'll be here in about 4 minutes to also go into this and just get her take on this and how it was played. It just, this is one of the most egregious fouls I've ever seen. Given that it wasn't done anywhere near in the flow of the game.
But
Yeah, it was.
is it
Like,
unusual
It
that
was a cheap shot. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, that was a cheap shot. It's like, Jordan rules is one thing. Ricky knows all about that. Ricky knows what happened when the bad boys played the Bulls.
yeah, Bill and Bill would have been proud of that one.
Yeah, and when they do that thing, when they do their thing, they do it in the spirit of the game, in the flow of the game.
right?
It
But
was,
is it unusual that they upgraded the foul to a flagrant one the next day?
I don't. Well, maybe for the WNBA, that's the first I've heard of them. Then again, too, who really paid attention to the WNBA before this year? They do it,
We're leading our show off talking about the WNBA.
and they do it all the time in the NBA. But they'll review the film and say, "Yeah, that was a foul." Then they have this thing that's like the last 2 minutes or whatever, and they'll talk about calls they made down the stretch that should have been made or ones that were missed, which I think doesn't serve anybody good because they're not going to change anything. All they're doing is saying, "My bad."
Right.
My
That's
bad.
all help anybody. Right.
Why not call it then?
Exactly. I lost the game. My bad is not going to help me. Not at all.
But the women's game, you look on the college level and even the WNBA, is as physical, if not more physical, than the men's side.
Oh, absolutely, Because I saw a lot of that game in, I think it was in Cardosa, but I can't remember her name now.
Yeah,
Cardosa.
South Carolina, and how she was playing inside. It seemed like every shot she took, she was getting fouled or she's getting beat up. She ended up on the floor, and there were no calls, so they let them play. Which is good. But it's not out of the ordinary to see Clark get D'd up hard, playing good defense like they did the next night. I think they played a Connecticut where they just focused on stopping her as opposed to beating her up, and which is just as effective. But you can see there's probably a little bit of resentment in there in and how they handle the situation, and it's exacerbated because she's the media darling for the team. I mean, it's all
not just the team, the whole WNBA.
Well, yeah, for the league. You're right. Like I said, just like the Atlanta Dream generally play all their home games out of maybe a 10,000 seat arena out in College Park near the airport. And the 2 games that they play the Dream in Atlanta have both been moved to the 19,000 seat State Farm Arena where the NBA team plays. So there's that effect. And people have to get on board, get used to that kind of stuff. And she's making the league money. Straight up.
And the broadcasting legend Bob Costas weighed in on this situation, talking about he was on CNN the other night talking about the fouls, Carter's foul, and a foul that took place in another game where Angel Reese took a hard foul, it was a flagrant foul from Alyssa Thomas that didn't get any coverage, and Bob Costa said it was because it was a black on black incident.
Black on black crime is ignored unless it's on Fox News. They're talking about it's always Chicago. It's like the only place where people are getting shot is in Chicago. And if somebody else commits a crime in some other city, it's an immigrant. I saw where on a headline on their station today where somebody got shot and they said the person was Venezuelan, and that makes this crime any worse or less.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. So I'll be interested to get Kim's thoughts on this.
Because I think
she joins us.
Because I think she covered the some of the teams. I think she's been on the forefront of women's sports, and this would be interesting to see what her take would be on this, because it seems like there is a difference, and to the point where some people almost get fired for getting too exuberant behind Miss Clark and calling her names that It really
Do
are not,
tell.
not on her birth certificate or driver's license.
Do tell.
Yes, Pat McAfee trying to make a point, called her out of her name. That was a rather derogatory term.
Yeah.
And that guy's a loose cannon. I'm still waiting for them to try to, to end his experiment. But they just paid all that money and fired all these people behind all these other things over there. So they're gonna make this thing work with him.
That's one of the things I don't miss about being in the sports writing business in today's
Climate.
in
Yes.
today's world of sports, man, because you got guys who are actually reporters, analysts, trying to be part of the news. I mean, saying stuff just to be sensational instead of thoughtful. Give us some thoughtful insight, like our guest I'm bringing in now, our great friend Kim Davis.
Yay.
Kim just don't come in here yelling and screaming.
No introduction needed. I'm here.
Real insight. Kim, how you doing? Great to have you on.
Thank you. It's good. I'm okay. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Well.
We're good.
Doing fantastic. We were discussing the hard foul on the flagrant foul that was called on Caitlin Clark and all the stuff that's going on with her arrival to the WNBA. And you have covered every aspect of sports, professional, college, whatever there is. Your thoughts on what we're seeing with Caitlin and what's going on with the WNBA?
Well, so, first of all, I covered the WNBA since its inception. I actually was on the broadcast team in the Comets during two of their championship years. And I remember back then, they used to sell out. And if you go back and look at some of the most viewed WNBA games, 7 out of the 10 of the most viewed ever games were of the Houston Comets in those first 4 years. And so my point is, this is not new, this excitement. There's no doubt that Caitlin Clark has brought something with her. And we can, talk about why that is. But, she has brought some more eyeballs to the league. There are some people who have not watched the league and they're new to the WNBA. And they're fans. The problem is a lot of those fans are people in the media, and it's creating a problem. Okay, I mean, I have seen some coverage that is just like, is this what we're doing? Because they don't understand the league. And so I think as much as they're trying to, elevate Caitlin, and no one's trying to diminish what she does, she's a rookie. Okay, and if we talk about, forget about women's sports, we've seen it in all sports, whether you're talking about, LeBron's first year as a rookie, how Michael Jordan was treated as a rookie, you name it, a person that comes in with all of this fanfare, are they kind of targeted? Yeah. And so let's talk about the foul this weekend with Kennedy. I mean, I followed her. She went to my alma mater, Texas A&M. That's who she is. I'm not saying it's good, but that's how she plays. This is not new. And so maybe at some point she might regret, making that play. I don't know, probably not. But it was, and it's not about condoning it. It was a hard foul. It was unnecessary. It was away from the ball. All those things are true. But it's just like we were talking about Pat Beverly doing something, and y'all would go, that's what he does. He's always doing something foolish. That's what this was. And so that it has become this whole other conversation where now we're trying to determine if the women of the WNBA should appreciate Caitlin more because she's saving them from themselves. It's just kind of offensive.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And you're forgetting that these women are competitors and they're competing. And, listen, I'll just say it. When I watched First Take yesterday, which I'm reminded why I don't watch it often.
So I missed that whole conversation. What did Stephen A. do?
So Stephen A. was Stephen A. They had a conversation about Caitlin, and they asked Monica McNutt, who is more than qualified to have a conversation. And if you followed her, she's going to be honest. She's going to give you context. She's covered the league. I mean, she's got all her own credentials. And there was at one point, this conversation went on for 40 minutes. And Stephen A. and Shannon, wanted to make her say that the women were jealous. At one point, they were yelling at her going, "No, Monica, say it. They're jealous. It's jealousy." And I was going, is this really happening on live television? Yeah. And then at one point, Shannon asked Monica a question. He says, "Okay, I'm going to ask you questions. And I just want a yes or no answer. No nuance." The debate show. Anyway, it was condescending and inappropriate. So much so that you didn't see it because ESPN took it down. I don't know if that's because Stephen A. said take it down, because at one point he was speechless, which is rare for him, when he was going back and forth. And when she said, "Well, Stephen A., with your platform, with all due respect, you could have been talking about the WNBA on this level 3 years ago."
Yeah, I read that.
There you go.
The rule.
Yes.
There you go. See, that's why we want Kim on the show.
Yes.
I saw a clip from Mike Wilbon, who, we all know, and who's also a personal friend. And Mike said, one of the problems is the national media is not having a conversation about race. And we're not being honest about it. And race is an issue. I mean, so today, apparently, I didn't watch First Take, but Stephen A. was on, and he brought Monica McNutt was back, to the surprise of many of us. I thought she had made her last appearance on First Take yesterday, because we know how he is. But, he went on later today to talk about, she's popular, why? Because she's been on First Take. No, because she's a part of the Knicks broadcast team. She's been covering the WNBA and college basketball, and she's got a body of work that makes people know who she is. It's just the arrogance of it. It's like, no, I got some black friends. I'm not racist.
Yes.
Nothing about
this is the thing with Stephen A. though. What you talked about today, he got called out for it by Jamel Hill as well. Yeah. This thing about where he thinks he's a kingmaker of some sort.
Right.
People are elevated because
it's weird. It is. It's just ridiculous. And you had the same day you had Pat McAfee, referring to Caitlin as the white bee, and then he had kind of apologized, and people like, well, yeah, but he meant it in a positive way. Is that what we're doing now?
How is that ever positive?
After the team, and she just said, "Don't worry about it. It's all good." I was like, "What is happening right now?"
Yeah. People don't know how to talk about it. That's what it is. You're right.
They don't know how to talk about it. And listen, Mike Greenberg, who I like and I respect. I don't know him personally. I've met him one time, but I don't know him. But on his show this morning, he opened the show with, this is the biggest story in sports right now. And so he had Rebecca Lobo and he had Monica McNutt. He said, I wanted to, I've not covered the WNBA for 35 years like I've covered the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NFL. And so I want to let you guys have the conversation. Like, he could moderate it, but his point was, this isn't what I've covered like you have. And I want to hear from the experts about it. And they talked about it. And Rebecca Lobo said, it's much to do about nothing. It happens all the time. You're acting like these women are competitors and they don't go hard. And then you got craziness like Matt Barnes saying that the Fever People team, they should be fighting and carrying on. How many game checks do these women get? Smaller game checks. They can't blow one off because they fighting for Caitlin Clark about some foolishness. And so they had a conversation that provided much more context around it. And Mike Greenberg handled the conversation like a journalist. And so we were able to get, because Rebecca Lobo is a Hall of Famer and she's a white woman. Let's just throw that in there. And then there's also Monica McNutt, and they basically came from the same place. And I just thought that was a much better way to handle it than you trying to make somebody say I would have been Monica on steroids. You're not going to make me say anything. If you invite me here as an analyst, you don't have to agree with me, but you're not going to make me say what you want me to say, Shannon and Stephen A. Because the truth is, you've covered the WNBA when you talked about Brittany Griner, or you talked about, maybe during after George Floyd and the protest, and maybe during the championships. But have you covered the league day in, day out? You have not. And so you don't clearly understand it.
And I think your point, they're not journalists, right? I believe you said that. So I think that plays into it as well. I feel
Stephen
like
likes to fancy himself as one, but he don't act like it anymore. And I
Mm-mm.
didn't really know him when he was, so
Do you really think that they were in the heat of the moment at that point when they saw their teammate get mollywopped right there on the court, that they're thinking, I'm only making $70,000 a year. I'm not going to go out there and get a $5,000.
I don't know if they're thinking that, but I also don't know if you're not a person that has that kind of energy and your first thing is to go out and fight. I mean, here's the other thing, something that Rebecca Lobo said this morning that I thought provided great context to the conversation. So that foul was elevated to a flagrant one. Last year in the WNBA, there were 65 flagrant fouls called. I mean, let's not act like, oh my God, it's a flagrant foul. There's nothing happening. Let's all rush in and save her. Caitlin Clark, remember, she was a badass in college. That's how she fancied herself. The difference is she's a guard. She's not as strong. She's going to get stronger. I believe she's going to do better. I mean, she's had some decent scoring, although she hasn't shot particularly well. Her team ain't that good. Like the only team that's worse is the Mystics, who are 0 and whatever they are. They played more games than anybody else. So the WNBA, the league is pimping her, but they need to stop making like it's Caitlin against the WNBA, because that's not good for the league and it's not good for Caitlin Clark. She cannot navigate that and be successful in this league.
Does she not bear some of the responsibility? Because just some of the interviews I've heard of her, she doesn't seem to have. It makes me. I feel like I'm Fox News talking about black people. The appropriate deference. She doesn't seem like she's coming in as a rookie and saying rookie things. It's about the team and that kind of thing. It seems like there is. She doesn't deflect all the attention. She seems like
she doesn't. She doesn't.
Yes.
That's not who she is.
Right.
It's like Kennedy. That's not who. I mean, you're right. She doesn't. That's not how she approaches it. Like even with Angel Reese, who said, "Listen, that's what's going to happen. It's basketball. I'm a rookie. People going." That's how this game is played. And Angel Reese also said, when you talk about the growth of the league, it's not just one person. I got something to do with it too. I mean, so it's creating all sorts of narratives. And, like one of the things that I've heard, the Barclays, and I shudder forever repeating what he says, but in the Stephen A's and, well, they're going to get charter flights and it's because of Caitlin. Well, if you cover the league, the league's been working on that for 5 years. They didn't just write a check and say, oh, wait, Caitlin, this isn't comfortable for you? Let's just get a charter flight for you. That's not how it works. And to act like things hadn't been trending up is just not, it's irresponsible. And one last thing. Mike Greenberg mentioned this. I didn't know it until he said it this morning on the show, and then I went to check. So the Chicago Tribune did an editorial because his point was, this is the big story. We can't pretend it's not a really big story because the Chicago Tribune doesn't do an editorial about it. He said, but the problem is they had a headline that says what Kennedy Carter did to Caitlin Clark was an assault. That's irresponsible. It's irresponsible.
I saw a headline that read Caitlin Clark beats Angel Reese. And I thought, why is it phrased that way? Why not use the team name? It's still pitting two women against each other.
Right.
Yeah. Kim, you mentioned the Houston Comets. Tell our younger viewers about the great Cynthia Cooper, who might be the greatest player. That USC team with the McGee twins. Quick story. Pam is from Flint. Pam and Paul is from Flint. Pam, when she would come back from overseas, she would play pickup ball with us at the Y. And, brothers got these egos. I know she can play, but she's still a sister now. I ought to be able to handle her.
Right.
Pam come in and give numbers left and right and just talk stuff to you. But she was a great player. All those great players you saw, but Cynthia Cooper might be the greatest player to ever don a uniform in the WNBA.
You know,
she's definitely in that conversation.
She's in the conversation. And think about it. Remember when she came in that first year, Cheryl Swoops was supposed to be the face of the league, right? And she, of course, had a great career. She's a Hall of Famer. But it was Cynthia Cooper that came in. So you had Cynthia Cooper. You had Tina Thompson also on that team. Kim Perot, who we remember ended up passing away from cancer. You had Monica Lamb, who was a 6'5" post player from Houston. But that team won the first 4 championships in the WNBA. And to think that right now the city doesn't even have a WNBA team just seems kind of critical.
Wow.
I mean, kind of criminal, right? But back then the games were on NBC. It was a part of the NBA package. The Summit, which is where those games were played, it's now Lakewood. It's where Lakewood Church is. It's that building. The games would sell out. They would regularly get 611, whatever the number was in that building. And they've got great TV numbers. Like now we're talking about ESPN's like, oh man, it had 1 million viewers. And that's really good. But they were getting 2, 3, 4 million people viewing games back then. So it's been ebbs and flows with the league. You know, it's not new. And stop acting like Caitlin is the great white hope. And if they're not nice to her, all of their opportunities are going to be gone. She's here to save the league. I just think it's silly. I mean, there are too many players we could talk about, great players, and you come up and you talk about Elisa Leslie. Oh yeah, Dawn Staley, she played in the league. Sabrina, I mean, there's just any number of players. Candace Parker. I mean, there's just been great players in the league, and it's just ridiculous that we are doing this. But listen, right time. It is where society and sports intersect. And we're seeing it. And that's what's happening. She's from Iowa, okay, Middle America. She's never won a championship. I don't think that means that she's not going to be a great player, but she didn't win in high school. She didn't win in college. And so listen, she got a $28 million shoe deal. Good for her. I don't think anybody begrudges her that. If you can get it, get it.
Well, I think a lot of people begrudge that.
Well, when I say begrudges, I mean, they might, but for me, if you can get it, get it. Who's going to say, oh, no, I'm not worthy?
Right. Oh, no, don't cut that check for me.
Yeah. I've got to earn it. Okay.
Yes. but the very fact we've had this extended conversation about women's basketball is good for the sport.
It's good for the sport, but we're not talking about the fact that Agumbawale is the leading scorer of the league at 26.5 points, right? And Asia Jackson at 26 points, 4 points a game, or that UConn is 8-0. Hey, we're talking about basketball. So it's good in a sense, but we're still not really having basketball conversations.
Okay.
How do you think, Kim, that it will, like the young players that are coming up, seeing this, this conflict, the black and the white, the fouls, just all of that discussion that they're hearing. How do you think that'll impact younger players that are coming up?
I think we see it in college. I mean, that's what we saw last year, some of those, collegiate games, because this is really come over and transferred from that class from women's college basketball. And so I guess it continues in a sense of the competition and people saying, oh yeah, there's a shot for me. But I don't think I think when we highlight and act like Caitlin Clark is some sort of a martyr or, she's being assaulted, I don't think that's the right message, because you don't want players coming into the league thinking this is how I make my mark by taking out another player. That's not what you want to see from the game. Now, over the years, we've seen them squabble in the WNBA. We've seen them throw. I mean, it's happened. I don't think you want the league to get to that on a regular basis, but it is sports. Sometimes tempers flare, and the competitiveness of it does sometimes lend itself to that. But to your point, Tree, I'm not really sure. I don't know how it's going to translate, but I think that they need to get it together to send the right messages about what the league is and how the league wants to be seen and grow. Because if it becomes this league that is, then they're going to be thugs and hoodlums. Okay, that's going to be the next thing.
They're already thugs and hoodlums. The people won't say it. It's one place they'll say it, but the folks won't say that because they won't want to call them the names they normally say in polite, in polite society. But but you got the WNBA is being talked about, and for the fact that it's like Tuesday, probably until Thursday maybe, and then you're going to pivot and talk about the NBA finals.
Right.
You finally move over to that. And what's your take on that? I mean, being a Texan, being somebody from Houston, can you legitimately root for the Mavericks?
Yeah, I don't have any real issue with seeing if the Mavericks can win. I've had people say I can't do it. Here's what I will tell you: if you had told me at the beginning of this season, the end of last year, that the Mavericks would be in the NBA Finals, I would say, man, if you've not been watching the league for the past few years, there's no way they get to the finals. I mean, so what they've done, and especially since the All-Star break, first you got to give a lot of credit to Jason Kidd, the way he's managed this team. I know, besides the Kyrie Irving, is he going to be the world is flat guy when he gets here? You don't really know what you're getting, but how do you navigate the basketball piece? I mean, nobody really wanted him, right? It was a risk for the Mavericks to say, okay, we're going to take him. And then the question was, are there enough basketballs to go around? Because Kyrie and Luka both need the ball in their hands. Well, their head coach is one of the greatest guys to have the ball in his hands to play the game in Jason Kidd. And I don't know that he gets enough credit for how he's been able to really navigate that relationship and help to guide them. Kyrie sounds like he's grown up. He does sound like he's matured. He talked about how when he flipped the fans off in Boston, that wasn't the best version of himself. And, people get a chance to grow and mature. So we will see. I think the series will go 7. Obviously, you pick Boston just because of all the weapons they have. Porzingis is back. But then Boston is kind of, unpredictable because sometimes they take quarters off, a game off, So if it turns out that the Mavericks win, I would not be surprised. But, intellectually and on paper, I'd have to go with the Celtics in terms of a favorite. I think it's going to
We're just happy about that.
We'll say the Mavericks. There's only one of us will probably take the Celtics. I saw there was 1 week here in Atlanta where the Celtics played in Atlanta 2 nights and 3 days, and they lost both of them by double digits to the Hawks.
Yeah.
So I've seen them at their worst, which means if you can lose to Atlanta twice in 1 week, what are you going to do with this team from Dallas, who really at the trade deadline picked up 2 great guys.
Man, they've been obviously one of the best teams in the league since the trade deadline. I mean, it's been Boston and it's been them, but you're right. You just don't know what you're going to get from Boston. They're so unpredictable and kind of unreliable. And if it comes down to coaching, I give that nod to Dallas.
Yeah. And Tim, you touched on it. The trades they made, they got Gafford from Washington, who a big center. The guy knows his role. He's going to rebound. And if he gets a shot and dunks it, he's going to dunk it. At one point, I think he made 28 straight field goals, guys. And most of them were dunks or layups. Then they get the kid Lively, the rookie. Yeah. I think he's got a streak of 18 straight field goals made now because he's either tip dunking or dunking it. So that tells me they know their roles. And then they get P.J. Washington from Charlotte. And they got these guys for practically nothing.
Right. Yeah, they have assembled a very good roster. And P.J. Washington has been really a reliable factor for them. But all those guys, like you mentioned, they know their role. They seem comfortable in their role. And even with Luka and going back to Luka and Kyrie, when the Luka, if Kyrie is going a little harder early because Luka doesn't, so that it doesn't tire Luka out so late in the game that Luka's able to do more late. I mean, I just think the way that they have, find a way to have that, yin and yang with them, and Batman and Robin, and we do know Robin was, of course, he was also a superhero. They seem to have that working, so it's gonna be fun to watch. I hope it's fun to watch. I hope it's the kind of series that it should be. And that's if Boston doesn't pull a Boston.
Well, you have to respect the Celtics. I mean, it seems like they got 5 guys out there on the floor. There's at least 7 deep that they all play really well. And if anybody can take you out, And then you got, get the note today as if it's like a duh note. The Porzingis is probably going to be back for the finals. Really? Did anybody think he wasn't going to be ready for the finals?
He's had enough time off between series, man.
Yeah, he played nothing. So, the Celtics have all the firepower. I think that that Brown is the X factor. I really don't trust Tatum at all. I think that he's like a paper lion type superstar. Jason hasn't done a whole lot. It's been Brown that's carried him. It's been White. White, once he shaved that head bald, he has come on, because that haircut last year he was failing miserably in fronts. But then Al Horford, who's 200 years old, Al Horford's 200 years old, former Hawk. They thought he was done, but this guy's rolling along, second tour duty with the Celtics, and it's just playing outstanding. So you got to give it to those guys.
And the one guy we haven't not mentioned yet is probably the glue to everything, Drew Holiday. This guy makes winning plays. Yeah. If you look at that closeout game against
that one steal he had, when Minnesota was trying to tie the game up, and he didn't foul. I mean, it was just a beautiful, beautiful defensive play. That guy was just awesome. They don't even need his offense, but he contributes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got, for the third time in history, 2 black coaches in the finals. And I think there's a lot of, I think you kind of touched on it, Kim. There's a lot of pressure on McDougal to try to deliver, because he took a lot of criticism in 22 for the Celtics' failures in the finals. He got that job, maybe a week before the start of the season, and got that team to the finals. So that is going to be interesting. And because there's been a lot of talk from some of the old heads about the status of black coaches in the NBA, which is something I thought we were long past, because it's to the point where a brother gets fired. Well, the brother got fired, which is how we always wanted it to be.
Right.
Yeah, but you look, the thing that happened in Cleveland is really that is just.
That's where I was going.
Something's weird about that, because I'm thinking, there was a guy in Utah that got a coach fired, and the guy ends up in Cleveland, and they make the playoffs, and the coach gets fired.
Donovan Mitchell. You're talking about Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, there's a common thread there. It's like, did Donovan Mitchell say, "Hey, I can't play for this guy," or you wonder what kind of thing that happens, because.
And he literally couldn't play for that guy. He missed.
Yeah, he was hurt. The injury wasn't so much if he played, it wouldn't injure it any further. I think that's how it went. I'm not sure. I'm thinking that's what the story was. It's like, you're not going to do any more damage to it if you play, or something to that effect. And they weren't going to get past Boston without him. It was,
and they didn't have Jared Allen.
Yeah,
right.
So Kim, your thoughts on that? They won 48 games last season. I think they were the number 4 seed. And New York just handling that first round was disappointing. And they came back and had another good season. And this time, they just did not have the firepower. Just like the Knicks didn't have the firepower.
I agree. I mean, they didn't have the firepower. You could look at. Go to the other side of the field. Look at Phoenix. Will you say Kevin Durant got his coach fired? I mean, we say it happened out there.
Their coach is just a whipping boy. No, anywhere he goes, they just feel like, okay, it's his fault. They had, they really never played together with Book and Durant and Beal. How many games did those guys play together?
Right.
What is? It seemed like
they talked about how late, in the season, or beyond the second half of the season, how Katie never even really talked to the man. What?
Yeah.
It's
a players league.
It's a players league. I mean, that CBA is a whole lot different than the one in the NFL.
Well, I'm waiting to see what's going to happen in Los Angeles, because I saw something today where I understand it's getting really close with JJ Redick become the next coach of the Lakers.
Yes.
I don't get that at all.
Oh, yeah, I get it. It's LeBron's guy. They have a podcast together.
Everybody's LeBron's guy.
Not everybody. Clearly. It's clearly Darvin Ham wasn't.
I thought Ty Lue was going to be the.
Well, he can't come because the Clippers said, no, never mind.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so I just think it is, and although the guys try to act like, oh, no, I'm hands off. I mean, if JJ Redick gets the job with the Lakers, it's because of his relationship. I want to say primarily because of his relationship with LeBron. That's what I think. Why else does JJ Redick get a head coach job?
Right.
Yeah. And he's on ESPN or whatever now. I mean, some of these guys see, oh, yeah, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about on TV.
Doris Burke is up next because doggone it, Doc Rivers started the year on that crew. He got a job in Milwaukee. JJ is about to get one in LA. It is time for Doris to get her shine.
Doris is probably like, look, I'm good where I am. I'm going to stay in my lane. I mean, Doc, look at what happened in Wisconsin. I mean, early in the season, and you're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
That whole thing. And it's like, well, the players weren't really buying in. They weren't, I guess.
And you talk about the impact. A lot of people think Giannis had a lot to do with him going, Adrian Griffin, and they were 30 and 13 or something.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, they were no better with Rivers at the helm, and it seems like this may be Doc's last time of getting a gig because everywhere he goes, it's not like he sometimes tacitly blames the players.
Well, listen, in Philadelphia, James Harden did him in. Now let's be clear.
Yes.
James Harden. I mean, I just still remember him sitting on the sideline when James just basically threw the ball in the stands because it was a game 7, and we know what he does in those kind of games. And Doc had this look, and so there's a couple people from Houston that were like posting stuff going, we try to tell you, Doc, that's who he is.
Wouldn't listen, huh?
Wouldn't listen. But yeah, this might be, but I think he's gotten a lot of opportunities,
Yeah,
I'll say.
It's strange, just like, it's like the cockroach after the nuclear explosion. It's like always
what Detroit did, right? Look at the move Detroit made this year in terms of throwing the money. He's like, no, I'm not really around. I don't want to coach. I'm gonna take a break. No, here's like $1 gazillion. Okay. I mean,
and Kim, they're talking about firing him.
Yeah, they are, because he looked like he don't want to be there.
Talking about firing. And I'm here in Detroit. I would watch some of those games and I see Monty on the sideline. I mean, number one, we had a really bad team.
You did.
And our best player, Cade Cunningham, was hurt half the time. You can see Monty on the side, like, damn, why did I take this money? I mean, it's like,
yeah. How much time left?
I'm telling you, I'm like, dude,
when is this thing over?
Yeah.
It was a big check, though.
That's what I say. Every the 1st and the 15th, he's like, oh, okay, I remember now. Okay,
yeah, that's right. Hey, Kim, you mentioned James Harden. I just saw a thing about him today, and he was talking about what he wants to be remembered as a winner and a teacher in the NBA. You have covered him. What are your thoughts?
Did you misunderstand that?
I'm just telling you what he said, Kim.
You heard him say
it? James Harden. Yep. This is what he said. I want to be remembered that I was a winner, that I was a teacher, that I had a different love for the game. I mean, like, put the money aside. I really enjoyed and loved playing basketball and playing it.
So I remember the day he, at the press conference, sitting next to his mother when they brought him here, when he came from Oklahoma. And, he is an amazing talent. So maybe you can say he's a winner, but he ain't a champion, right? There's something about that championship DNA, and I just never thought they had it. I didn't think they would win it with him. And there were opportunities, and and you could say, well, they were button heads with the Warriors during that time when the Warriors were all things, where all the teams were trying to structure their roster to compete and win against the Warriors. But I'm thinking of games right now, a game against the Spurs where he didn't even take a shot till the second quarter. I was like, is he sick? What is wrong with him? Right? Like, what is he doing? Or a game against Golden State in the Western Conference Finals where you go 0 for 10. I just, when it really mattered in closeout games, he just got tight. I mean, he just seemed like he was tight. He's not, so yeah, I want to be a winner. Okay. But he's not
a teacher. And a teacher.
The teacher throws me. Like, what are you teaching? Because listen, when Chris Paul came to Houston, because everybody comes to Houston, he really wanted them, and then he would fall out of love and get divorced, and he would get the team in a divorce. Right? It happened with Dwight Howard. Kevin McHale, not that he brought Kevin here, but he fell out of love with Kevin McHale. And remember Kevin McHale that one season, they were like less than 20 games in and they ran him out of town. And then CP3 came, and y'all remember they were doing the State Farm commercials together. CP3 had brought him into that. I think that first year when James won MVP, I think if CP3 is not here, he doesn't get the MVP. I think his game was elevated because of what Chris Paul brought to the team and his leadership and just some things that he probably helped. He's a teacher. And then, of course, James, I love with CP3. He got the team in a divorce. They shipped CP3 off. Then they were like, oh, let's go get Russell Westbrook. I knew that wasn't going to work. Well, yeah, they were great friends. I was like, when they were great friends, James was coming off the bench. I mean, they're not the same. They now both won MVPs, and whatever you want to say about Russell Westbrook, he goes hard all the time. And so we knew that was going to be some drama because James's approach to the game and playing, and it's just different. And you saw it was Daryl Morey who was like the enabler for him. He had an owner that really just was so enamored with James Harden, and it didn't end well. And so then he leaves and he goes to, where did he go first? He went to New Jersey first. That was going to be it. That was a disaster. Then he wanted out of New Jersey, but I don't want to tell nobody I want out. What? So then he goes to Philadelphia. That was going to be it. Then that didn't work. You always mad and you leave.
So what's the lesson that he's going to teach?
Yes, be really good, get good enough to where you can push your way out and still make a lot of money. I don't know what the lesson is.
Yeah.
Just for a second, now with the NBA Finals going on here, we're talking about Missoula. Your coach, do you think, if your coach was still the Celtics coach, would it be any different and more competitive going into this finals?
I would probably say yeah. I mean, he's a no-nonsense guy. I mean, when he cracks a smile during the media an interview or anywhere other than on the court with the players, but it's like, what? Is he smiling? I mean, he laughs. I mean, but he demands, not perfection, but you got to play hard. Defense is a non-negotiable. He don't care who you are. He will put you on the bench. And the players know that, they respect it, they bought in. So to answer your question, I think yes. And I'm going to divert just a little bit and just go to baseball. I'm seeing it with these Houston Astros and Joe Espada, who everybody loved. They like him a whole lot, but do they respect him like they respected Dusty Baker? Probably not. And I think that's some of what you're seeing with that team. So leadership really does matter. And I think with Ime at the helm, they probably, if they hadn't won one yet, they would definitely, I think, they're definitely a favorite this year with Ime.
Hey guys, we just got a couple of more minutes left here. I want to play this little clip regarding the passing of one of the great players in the history of the NFL, Larry Allen.
Yeah.
92 pounds.
The strongest man.
I still remember that. 692 pounds. When a man can bench press 692 pounds, that man can launch you. It's like going against a bear, man. I mean, he's just humongous. Man, he'll grab you, pick you up, and start laughing. And there's nothing you can do. It's like going against a car. You're trying to stop him, and you're just sliding. I've seen him take linebackers, just drop him 20 yards. Not 5, not 10, 20 yards. And you go back in the huddle, that linebacker looking at you going, what am I supposed to do? Do the best you can. Do the best you can.
That's a great clip.
That's courtesy of NFL Networks. The great Larry Allen.
52 years old, man. Really young.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, one of the best to do that. And while we got you here, the Texans were one of the great stories in the NFL last year, and a lot of expectations in Houston now. We got mini camps going on here in Detroit, probably in Atlanta and Houston too.
Yeah, mini camp
Any
today and tomorrow.
What's going on down in Texas?
Well, listen, expectations are high. They've got a lot of offensive weapons. They've got a tough schedule. If you think about 2 years ago when Jacksonville won the division and then they played that first place schedule last year, the schedule does make a difference, right? Well, they end up playing Kansas City late. The Texans are playing the Cardinals just because of schedule. So schedule matters. But I do think this team has added some weapons. The Stephon Diggs piece, they basically have kind of like three wide receivers that could be ones, but they all do different things, right? And then they bring in Joe Mixon. I just think that offensively, I don't have a lot of questions. I am curious about what they do defensively because there's some questions to me, but I trust DeMeco with the defense. So, the defense looks very different. You made a lot of changes up front. And I'm not real sure about what's going to happen with the secondary. You've got a couple guys that have bounced around a little bit. Obviously, Stingley, if you talk about corner, he's going to nail down one side. The other side is kind of up for grabs. But I think they're competitive. I think they've got that word culture, but they've got a good culture there. And CJ they talk about his leadership and how even in year 2, like he stepped into it last year, but this year, even more so. Like DeMeco talked about it today, the offense didn't look great. I mean, this mini camp, but he said at one point CJ had to like hold my, hey guys, he's so respected. And because he works hard and he brings it, I wasn't sure. He was really busy in the off season, hanging out with Micah Parsons and going to Asia and, lots of stuff he was doing, but he was still handling his business. It's that year 2, though, that I'm always really interested in how the player makes that jump because now there are expectations. There's a lot of tape. And so then there's that pressure, right, that now exists. How do you navigate it? How do you handle it? I think he's built for it. We're about to see.
But you're still in that division. I mean, you got Jacksonville is pretty much treading water. Indy, you don't know what you're going to get with Richardson coming back.
You don't know what you're going to get, but they've added some pieces, and they've got they got the running back healthy from the beginning. We'll see. I say healthy. We haven't got the training camp yet, but
don't talk to me about that dude because I had him on my fantasy running back. He got hurt. He is dead to me.
Wow.
Hey, I got a question for you guys, Ricky, and I thought about you. I should have called you last week. When Major League Baseball decided to incorporate the statistics of Negro leagues, how big was? I was just like, this is so big. Yeah. What are your thoughts about that? Did you ever
it was downplayed, I think. Don't you think, guys?
I just was like, no one's talking about it enough.
Yeah.
I think people are scared to talk about it because it's an element of race. And when people do talk about it, they'll say, well, how could they do that? How could those guys be added to these records? Because they didn't play against the best talent.
Yeah, I did see that.
And I think not Buster Olney, but I think Ken Rosenthal came out and said, well, before 1947, the white guys didn't play against the best talent. So,
what you gonna do? Right?
Yeah, how you gonna say that? So I thought it was just monumental because now I think the highest batting average in Major League history belongs now to Josh Gibson.
It's Josh Gibson. That's why they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And not Ty Cobb. So you got those things going. That's interesting.
Yeah, you're right, Kim. It was like they announced it and then, you didn't really hear anything else about it after that.
You know, I kept like, hey guys, anybody else talking about this? And I was, it was disappointing that they weren't talking about it more. It's overdue. I'm glad it finally got there, and it took them forever, but
But I think they kind of telegraphed it because you know that on June 20th, they're going to play the game at Rickwood Stadium. Major League Baseball game, because it's sort of a homage to the Negro Leagues and Willie Mays, because that's where he made his bones when he played in the Negro League. You know, they had another guy playing for Indianapolis, became a pretty good home run hitter, ended up in Milwaukee, then came over to Atlanta, and he started hammering out home runs to beat Babe Ruth. So I mean, that people are talking about Negro League players in ways that they hadn't before. Just like the WNBA, it's like people are all of a sudden discovering these things that people have talked about for years.
Well, and because now that they are incorporated, they own a lot of the records.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. And don't forget about the 59-year-old pitcher that was still getting people out when he came up. And
Tim, you said people have been talking about it for years, but I think of a certain generation, perhaps, and so I think that younger fans. We already talked for Black youth. We already talked about how there's not that many in baseball, and so
you're right.
We have to pass that down.
There are older people who have a greater respect, and it's like, and here it is, y'all. Lift your feet up. I'm dropping names. I was having lunch with Reggie Jackson in San Diego, and Reggie's dad played in the Negro League, and so we're talking, and Reggie just stops. And he says, "Buck O'Neil," and he runs over, and then he starts giving this history lesson about Buck O'Neil, who was one of the great Negro League players, who became an ambassador, essentially for the Negro League. The Negro League Hall of Fame's there in Kansas City, I think, largely because of Buck O'Neil. But you see people like Reggie, whose dad played, and there are older African-American baseball players who revered the Negro League, and players like Buck O'Neil and Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and Hank and Willie Mays, and they know where those guys came from. Here in Atlanta, it was Atlanta Black Crackers. There were a lot of media guys here. Chico Renfro, a former radio guy, he played in the Negro League, and he was a guy that we sit there in the press box, and he regaled stories of guys and how they played. And of course, me being not knowing what they're talking about, I'm going, yeah, okay. Well, they're not out here playing against, the Braves are playing Cincinnati tonight, that kind of thing. And you get an education from those guys, and you begrudgingly, and then you learn to actually have a lot of respect for what those guys did and what they went through. And I think the deal is with and there's a story out there in Washington where Washington's based Negro League teams were selling out and drawing a lot of things. And I think the guy Griffith, who owned the Senators Major League team, somehow killed off Negro League baseball. He was a racist. He was a racist and didn't like it when those teams were out drawing his Major League team. Yeah. So, there's just reams of stories out there.
I got this quick story before we get out of here. Growing up in Nashville and being around golf all my life, I had the pleasure of meeting Wesley Doc Dennis, who was an all-star first baseman for the Baltimore Elite Giants. It was always elite, but they would say Elite Giants, the Baltimore Elite Giants. All-star first baseman. After he retired, he came back to Nashville, took up golf, and this guy was as great in golf as he was in baseball. He had arms like Popeye, and you could see why he would hit balls. So I asked him one day, I said, "Doc, how do you get out of a bunker?" And he thought about it. He would win all the tournaments that would come around. "Doc, how do you get out of a bunker?" He said, "I don't know. I don't think I've ever been in one."
Wow.
Tiger can't say that, man.
That's a great story.
He said, "I can't help you, young man."
Hey, before we get out, I just want to leave you guys with these two names: Simone Biles and Coco Gauff.
Yes.
I saw her before.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Simone was nine championships for Simone.
world titles. Yeah,
Okay.
no one's ever done it.
Yeah.
Kim, did you see
We're
Coco
magic.
today?
I saw the highlights of it. Yeah.
She lost the first match, and I was telling Tree and Tim before we came on, that just made her mad, man. That was the worst
yeah.
thing someone could have done.
And you know the thing too, she never quits, right? She never quits. And you know the Naomi Osaka match that she played. I mean, she was in that match with the number one player in the world with Swiatek, and she was up, 5-2 in the third. And when it got to be 5-3, I was like, woo. And when it got to be 5-4, I was like, that's it. But she didn't quit. But there's a reason Swiatek is number one in the world. So it was some good matches. It was good to see, but yeah, I just enjoy watching Coco play.
Yeah.
I do too. I was just raving around. I was yelling and screaming watching her come back on the young lady today. Kim, how can people follow your great work and your great insight? And we really want to thank you about your comments tonight, particularly concerning the WNBA. It's some of the best insight I've heard on that topic.
Oh, well, thank you. So you can follow me on Twitter at Kim Y. Davis. And then it's Kim Y. Davis Media on Instagram. But if you follow me there, you can get links to my show. And I'm working on, I have to say it because it'll make me finish it. I'm close to finishing the book that I've restarted and changed like a gazillion times. And I finally decided the book just needs to be finished. It didn't have to be the only one, but I'm working on a book that hopefully I'll have finished definitely before the end of the month, but probably sooner. So,
excellent.
Oh, you want to give us an idea of the topic?
So the title of the book is Sports, My Love Language, ... It's complicated.
Oh,
And
when
I
that
love
bad
that.
boy drops, you got to come back here. So.
Yes.
Absolutely. I certainly will.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we're going to get out of here. From my great friends, Tree McDougal and Tim Turner, I want to thank Kim Davis. I'm Rickey Hampton.
All right. Be kind, everyone.
All right. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.